Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to do some reverse engineering of flies. And the plan is to do, I was given some flies as samples, and the plan is to try to work out how they're made. So let's start with something simple here. This is a simple reflective silver body and a little bit of red hackle for a throat on what looks to me like a standard saltwater hook, sizes between 8 and 6, depending on the particular manufacturer you're looking at. So I took some smaller hooks here to do this fly, and I took some bigger hooks. This is the size 6 saltwater hook that I have in some larger quantities, so I'm gonna start with that one. For the thread, I'm going to use something a little sturdier, and one of my favorite threads is this Danville's 3/0, which is nice and flat, so it can be used to make pretty good looking bodies. And for the body, you have several choices, as I wrote in the email. Any sort of nice flat braid is going to do the trick. I have some from the dollar store, which is pretty good and sturdy, and it's reasonably shiny and reflective. This is, super cheap. And then, of course, fancy stuff from the fly shop. This is this diamond braid or something similar to that. I think this is officially sparkle braid. I don't know what the difference is between sparkle and diamond braid, but they look kind of the same. This is a softer material, and it sort of lies very nicely on the hook as well. But in order to get a decent body, I always tie at the front, right behind the eye, and then go over it with a thread. And this is where it helps to flatten the thread a little bit by spinning it. So this way you get a very nice smooth underbody. And then move the thread back, just behind the eye. Let this hang down a little bit, and then just wrap the body. Close turns. If you're worried about durability, you could use a wire rib. I would be a little reluctant with this material using Sally Hansen's, because it sort of dulls a little bit the shininess of the material, which I think is its main attraction. So close this up and then cut it with something else than your fine scissors. And I'll turn the fly upside down. Okay, well, this little strand of stray shininess can be cut off, and then turn it upside down to put in a bit of hackle. And what I have here is just some bright red schlappen that I picked up at the fly shop. Get a little bunch of fibers, rip them off the stem, pull them together, and measure here to basically the point of the hook, and tie them on. Trim. Finish the fly off. Again, to get a neater head, I try to remember to untwist my thread a little bit. Make a few nice finishing wraps here. And then just tie a couple of knots. Whip finish number 1. whip finish number 2. And that's the fly. I'm not sure about all the details and the history of this fly, but it's one of these super simple patterns that people seem to use around here for salmon. So I'm going to try to find exactly where it is to be used and so on. So if any of you can tell me more about this fly, I'll be happy to hear it.
I believe that fly is called the Ira Special.
Aha, so that is the famous Ira Special.
I believe it is, and used on the Souk River very successfully.
Okay, so there we have it. It's the Ira Special. I'm going to have to send a new email to to chat clarifying what is each of these flies. Now, if my memory serves me well, the next fly is also some kind of Ira Special, because I got this from Ira when we had the fish out at Souk earlier this fall. And this again is one of those simplicity itself type flies. Just the hook, thread, a nice, very shiny material for the body, and then a wing made out of fine Flashabou or similar stuff like that. And as we were fishing for chum and possibly coho, although I haven't seen a coho there yet, this should be working for both. Same hook as before. Now here I was trying to match the length of the fly. So as you can see, what I was saying earlier, depending on what hook you have, I think what's really important to pay attention to is the length of the shank. So this is a size 6 hook. This one here is probably looking at the size of the gap on this hook. It's probably a long shank size 10 hook. Okay. Overall, the fly is about, I don't know, what would be the length of this thing? 3/4 of an inch to an inch, somewhere in there. All right, so I'm going to try to tie this one on a size 6 hook. And basically the process is the same and the materials are almost the same except for the wing. So start with a thread. Attach the tinsel here right at the head of the fly, or the braid, or whatever it is. So I'm just going to stay with the same material for now. Oh. And wrap. Doesn't look good. I just want to make sure that the underbody is well covered. Leave a little bit of, because that extra stuff I'm going to put in for the wing is going to take a lot more space than the hackle did on the previous fly. I'm going to leave for sure 1 eye's width of space here behind the eye. Okay, so now I have some choices for the wing. I don't know exactly what material was used there, but I don't think that's all that important. And so I have here, I have some stuff that used to be called super flash. I have this Flashabou Mirage. So these materials are a little bit stiffer and they seem to be quite similar to what was used on the sample fly. And there's this other stuff, which is twisted super flash, which is a lot limper. And then I have some of these polar flash in pearl, which is very nice, kind of soft and swimmy material. So we're kind of spoiled for choices here. I'm gonna give it a try with a polar flash because simply I like the look of it a lot. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull several strands of this. Not too many, so I don't know how many there would be here. 3, 4, 5 strands of the stuff. Maybe 6. We'll see how it comes out. So just pull a few strands of this stuff. Like so. And I'm not going to take too many strands of this material because I'm going to fold it over several times to get that wing done. Okay, so here we have it. So fold it in half once, and then cut it through. And then fold it in half one more time, and that might actually be a thick enough wing. Yeah, I think that'll be plenty. So what I do is I just fold it in half, keep the uncut end between my thumb and forefinger, and then transfer to the other hand. So I'm left here with the little loop, which then I'm going to slip over the hook like this. I'm going to pull these fibers together nice and tight. And I'm going to tie them on, secure them with a thread. Okay, so this way I get them a little bit on top of the hook, so I need to go back a little bit so they lie down a little bit more. There you go. So here's a wing. And now I'm going to build a neat little head. Again, untwist the thread a little bit. Cover it all up. Give it a couple of whip finishes. Number 1. Number 2. And then set the fly aside for varnishing the head. Now I don't, with this kinds of things, I tie a bunch of them at once and then I do the varnishing at the end. Okay, one more detail before I take the fly out of the vise. I want to cut this wing to length. So it's about here, I'd say. That's enough of a, you want to go past the bend of the hook, but not too far. There you go. And there's the completed fly. You can go and do a wing that's, you know, enveloping the body a little bit more, but then you risk ending up with more tangles in the bend of the hook. So I'll try this one like this. It should work. It's, I think, close enough to the original. So this one is probably IRA special number 2. And for the final fly from this set, where's the original? Okay, here. For the final fly, I have this little monster tied on a circle hook with 2 pieces of fly line backing and some flash. It's a very simple fly. Dennis mentioned earlier that this was something that worked for him on Souk River a few years back and not very well since then. So he ended up actually reusing the circle hooks for different pattern. Well, I'm just gonna tie a few, bearing in mind that I shouldn't tie too many in case I end up stuck with a number of flies that don't work, taking room in my fly box. And here, this hook, I just happened to find some circle hooks on sale at Robinson. So this is a bit of a one-off. For me, I don't have any other circle hooks, but these were, and they're not cheap either. $10 for 25 on sale. These are officially size 10 hooks. Okay, so I'm always just looking at the hook and eyeballing it rather than going by these numbers because they're not exactly very, very meaningful. This size 10 hook does not compare to size 10 in the other styles of hooks that I had. So in this case, I need to switch to hot orange thread. And to build a little bit of an underbody with thread, not too much. And I wanted to do one more thing with this fly. I wanted to flip it over. And so in order to flip it over, I'm going to need some weight on the back of the fly. So what I'm going to do is first take the thread well into the bend of the hook, because another feature of this fly is a little hot orange tag at the back. So here's my little hot orange tag. And now I'm going to move the thread forward just a little bit of that tag and try. This is going to take a while because this is only 70 denier thread. Tie a little bump thread that would allow me to secure a pair of eyes. And what I was using for eyes here is simple hardware store bead chain. I measure them so I can compare them to the stuff that you buy from the fly shop, and these are 4.5 millimeter beads. I'll move the thread here between the tag and the little thread bump and secure. Here I have to be careful not to nick the thread. Okay, and I need to turn this in the vise so I can actually see, make sure that the placement of the eyes is good. It came out a little bit further forward than I intended it to be, but it's okay. But there's just a teensy little gap here behind the eyes. I'm just going to fill that up with thread. It's just going to give me a slightly bigger tag. Okay. And now I move the thread in front, and I want a body here. Now this is likely going to be exposed to chump teeth. So I'm going to leave well alone the other material, and I'm going to use some of the dollar store stuff, which is also a braid, but this pretty tough stuff. So I'm going to do the same as before. Wrap over to the eye, to the eyes, sorry. And then go back to the head of the fly. Now, with the circle hooks, if you want to tie in a comfortable position, you may want to reposition the hook like halfway through the process. And it's pretty hard to do this using the rotary vise because of the very strong curvature of the shank. So this time I'm just going to wrap this the traditional way. get a nice little shiny body. And time to secure it here behind the head again. Leave a little bit of room because we need to add some wing material. Secure this. A few wraps in front as well, and then cut it. Again, I use these. These are actually fine cutters for electronics, and I find them to be pretty perfect for cutting fly tying wire and tinsels and rougher stuff. They cut very well. They certainly work way better than some old sacrificial scissors that I have, and I don't know if that's simply because those scissors have dulled over the years, or this stuff is just so much better. Okay, now for the wing, the original just had a few strands of crystal flash, and I have here on my desk, if I can find it, I have, again, I like this. Crystal flash is a little bit stiff. If I want something that swims a little better and is softer, I like this acrylics stuff. So I'm going to use a few strands of this. Careful, not too many, because this is a fairly sparse fly. And I do have a tendency of, putting a little bit too much material sometimes. Again, just this time I'm only going to fold it once. Slip it over the other hook, pull it a bit forward. And I want it to be a little bit more along the sides, not so much on top because of the curvature of the hook. Let's see, hopefully I didn't overdo it. Okay, something like this. I'll cut everything to size at the very end. And now I'm just going to use
I think that's the recording portion. He's recording it, so that's for the guys recording.
So now for the rest of the wing, I have some 30-pound orange fly line backing, and I have some chartreuse. No, I can tie a lot of flies from this. I'm just gonna cut myself a little piece of the backing. And I'm going to tie, this is fairly flat, the way it comes off the spool, although it's woven Dacron. I'm just going to tie it on either side of the hook shank at the head. So this is on one side, the orange. And then I'm going to tie the chartreuse on the other side. I'm just going to turn this over to my side so I can see a little bit better what I'm doing. And let's cut a piece of the yellow or chartreuse. Put it flat along the side of the hook. Probably doesn't matter too much because these things are going to move in the water a fair bit. But for the ooh and ah purposes of opening the fly box to other fishermen to look at, this is of paramount importance. Okay, so here the head, again, a few more wraps of thread because this is fairly fine thread. And again, this is more the ooh and ah factor than anything else. A couple of whip finishes. It's going to be lacquered again at the end as a batch with the other flies. So for now, just the last thing left is to trim that wing. Okay. I'm just going to pull the wing together. all the things, fly line backing and all. Measure it up. This is a bit of a longer wing here, as you can see. Maybe I should turn this around so you can see. There you go. Measure it up. I'm doing about twice the shank length. Cut. And that's the fly. And the idea is, again, to fish this thing upside down. And just for the record, I was weighing here the beads and the hooks, and we were having a little discussion about this earlier. And they come in at close to 6 grains each. So I'm thinking these bead chain eyes, I haven't put this fly in the water yet, but I'm thinking the bead chain eyes being as heavy as the hook, they ought to be able to turn this thing around. Although they're much, if you think of leverage, they're very close to the shank here, whereas this rest of the hook here from the bend on, the whole circle, gives a lot of leverage to sort of keep the fly going the other way around. But we'll see. I gotta go and do some field research after this. And this is the third and final pattern for today. Now I'm going to stop this recording.